This is the Untold Hour. Tonight's story is the one they left out of the myth. Everyone knows Arachne, a weaver so arrogant she challenged a goddess and was turned into a spider for her pride. A warning about hubris told for 3,000 years. But almost nobody asks what she actually wove that day, because I don't think this was ever a story about talent or arrogance or knowing your place. I think it's a story about what happens when a mortal tells the truth, and the truth turns out to be about the gods themselves. Tonight, I want to show you what was actually on that loom. To understand it, we have to start with who Arachne was before any of this happened. She was a weaver from Lydia, the daughter of a humble dyer, no royal blood, no divine parentage, nothing but her own 2 hands and years of practice. Her father worked with wool dyed a deep, rare purple, and Arachne grew up surrounded by looms, learning the trade the way other children learn to walk. But her hands were extraordinary, even by the standards of a family that had worked cloth for generations. People traveled for days just to watch her work the way you travel to see something genuinely rare. The nymphs themselves, the stories say, would leave their groves and streams just to sit and watch her weave, drawn by something that felt closer to magic than craft. Her skill wasn't a rumor. It was something people could see with their own eyes, thread by thread, taking shape in front of them, faster and finer than anyone thought possible for human hands alone. There's a specific memory I like to imagine from her childhood, one no ancient text records, but that fits everything we know about who she became. Her father, watching her work a loom for the first time on her own, without guidance, without correction, simply stood back and let her make her own mistakes. She unraveled entire days of work more than once, refusing to let an uneven thread stay hidden under the rest of the pattern, insisting on starting over rather than letting something imperfect pass as finished. That stubbornness, I think, was there long before any goddess ever entered the story. It wasn't arrogance, it was a refusal to let anything less than the truth of her own best work stand in for itself. By the time she was grown, merchants traveled from distant cities specifically to commission pieces from her, paying in silver for cloth that told entire stories across a single length of fabric. She never signed her work the way some weavers did. She didn't need to. Anyone who saw it knew immediately whose hands had made it, the way you recognize a voice before you ever see the face attached to it. She could weave a seam so detailed you'd swear the figures in it were breathing, fabric so fine it seemed to move like water instead of thread. And when people admired her that much, they started saying something dangerous, even if they meant it as praise. They said Athena herself must have taught her. It became the easiest explanation, repeated so often, it started to feel like fact instead of assumption. Arachne corrected them. Every time, without exception. No, she said. No one taught me this. I built the skill myself, alone. With nothing but practice and time and my own 2 hands. I want you to sit with that correction for a moment, because I think it's the real beginning of everything that follows. She wasn't claiming to be greater than a goddess. She was refusing to hand her own work over to someone else's legend, refusing to let years of calluses and mistakes and slow improvement be erased by a more convenient story. That's a different thing entirely than arrogance, even if it got remembered as exactly that for 3,000 years afterward. Word of her refusal reached Athena eventually, the way these things always do among gods who dislike being denied credit for anything within their domain. Athena came to her disguised as an old woman, hunched and gray-haired, offering her one last chance to take it back, to simply say the goddess had guided her hands and let the matter end quietly there, no harm done. It would have cost her nothing on the surface. a small lie easily forgiven that would have kept her safe. Arachne refused again. "If Athena thinks she's better than me," she said, "let her come and prove it herself instead of hiding behind an old woman's face." Athena dropped the disguise. Beneath it stood the goddess herself, tall and armored, gray eyes unreadable. A contest was arranged, 2 looms side by side, each woman weaving whatever she chose, judged purely on the skill and the truth of what appeared on the fabric by the time the sun went down. Word spread quickly through the region. By midday, a crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, mortals and lesser spirits alike, drawn by the rare sight of a goddess and a mortal woman working side by side under the same open sky. No one spoke much, the stories say. There was only the sound of 2 shuttles moving through 2 looms, threads pulling taut, the occasional creak of wood as both women worked without pause through the heat of the afternoon. Arachne's hands moved faster than anyone watching had ever seen, even those who'd traveled specifically to see her work before. She barely seemed to look at the pattern taking shape, as though her fingers already knew exactly where each thread belonged before her mind had finished deciding. Athena worked more deliberately, each motion precise and unhurried, the confidence of someone who had never once, in the entire history of the craft, been outmatched by anyone who attempted it. Athena's tapestry showed the gods in glory, Olympus in full splendor, the 12 Olympians seated in judgment, her own victory over Poseidon for the naming of Athens woven proudly at its center. It was beautiful, technically flawless, and it was also, in its own way, a kind of warning stitched into the border, small scenes of mortals who dared to challenge the gods and the punishments that followed each of them in turn. A subtle message woven into the edges where you'd almost miss it if you weren't looking closely enough. Arachne wove something entirely different. She chose to depict the gods too, but not in glory. She wove Zeus disguised as a bull, carrying off Europa against her will, the girl's hands reaching helplessly toward a shore she'd never see again. She wove Zeus as a swan, deceiving Leda, Zeus as golden rain, entering a locked tower to reach Danae, who had no way to refuse him and no one to complain to afterward. She wove Poseidon's assaults, Apollo's pursuits, scene after scene of gods using their power against mortals who had no way to refuse them, rendered in thread with unflinching technical precision. Every thread of it was true. Every single scene was something that had actually happened. Stories the gods themselves had never bothered to deny, because who exactly was going to hold them accountable for any of it? I want you to think about what it actually took to weave that. Not just the skill, though the skill was undeniable. Even Athena would admit as much once the work was finished. It took a mortal woman looking directly at the most powerful beings in the universe and choosing to tell the truth about them anyway, knowing exactly who would be judging the result of her own honesty. When it was finished, the 2 tapestries hung side by side in the fading light, and even Athena, examining the work with an eye trained across centuries to find flaws, could not find a single technical mistake in Arachne's weaving. Not one dropped thread, not one uneven line. The work itself was perfect, and everyone present, mortal and divine, could see that it was perfect. And that, I think, is the actual crime if you strip away 3,000 years of the word pride getting attached to this story instead of the word that actually belongs here. It wasn't that Arachne lost the contest on skill. The old texts are fairly clear that she didn't, and that Athena knew it too, standing there in front of the evidence. It's that she won it, and the tapestry she won it with happened to be an accurate, undeniable record of every abuse of power the gods had ever quietly gotten away with, displayed for anyone walking past to see. Athena's fury, when it finally came, wasn't calm judgment handed down from a place of wounded pride about craftsmanship or technique. She tore Arachne's tapestry to pieces, every scene of it shredded, the evidence destroyed before anyone else passing through could examine it too closely or ask too many questions. Then she struck Arachne across the face with the weaving shuttle still in her hand, hard enough to draw blood. I think it's worth sitting with the fact that a goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare responded to being shown an uncomfortable truth by destroying the evidence and physically striking the person who'd revealed it to the world. That's not the behavior of someone who won an argument on its merits. That's the behavior of someone who couldn't afford to let the argument be examined any further by anyone else who happened to walk by. I think that's worth remembering the next time you watch someone with far less power than you tell an inconvenient truth, and notice how tempting it can be to focus on their tone instead of their accuracy. Arachne, humiliated and in pain, ran from the contest and tried to hang herself with a length of rope, unable to bear what had just happened to her in front of everyone. Even in that moment, at the very edge of everything, her instinct was still weaving, using rope, using thread, the one material she'd always understood better than anything else in her entire life. Athena stopped her before she died, not entirely out of mercy, the old sources are careful to note, out of something closer to control over how this story would be allowed to end. She sprinkled Arachne with a potion made from aconite, and slowly, in front of her, in front of anyone still watching, Arachne's body began to change into something else entirely. Her limbs shrank, her body compressed, thread, actual silk thread, began to spin from within her, the way it always had from her hands, except now it came from her entire transformed being. She became a spider, cursed to weave for the rest of her existence forever, with no audience left to admire the work, no contest left to win, no truth left to display where anyone else could see it clearly. The crowd that had gathered to watch the contest scattered before the transformation finished, unwilling or unable to watch a woman's body fold and shrink into something so much smaller than what she'd been an hour earlier. I imagine the last fully human thought she had, in that final moment before the change completed itself, was still about the work. Not fear, not even anger anymore, by that point. Just a kind of stunned awareness that her hands, the actual instruments of everything she'd ever made, were disappearing into something entirely new, and that whatever came next would have to find some other way to keep making things true. I think that detail matters more than almost anything else in this story. Athena didn't take weaving away from her as punishment, which would have been the more obvious choice. She let her keep the one thing she'd always been proudest of, and made absolutely certain no one would ever again be able to see what she made with it, or understand what it meant. The talent stayed, the audience didn't. That's not really a punishment about pride at all, if you actually think about what it removes from a person in the end. It's a punishment specifically designed to silence a witness, while leaving her just enough of herself intact to fully understand exactly what had been taken away from her forever. I imagine there's a version of the rest of this that no text ever bothered to record. Arachne, small and transformed, still weaving, thread after thread, in corners and eaves where almost nobody ever looks closely enough to notice. Somewhere, centuries later, a child would sit on a porch step watching a spider work a web between two railings, patient and unhurried, and feel something they couldn't quite name, a kind of respect maybe for a task performed completely without needing an audience to justify it. They wouldn't know her name. Almost no one watching a spider today does. but the pattern itself, the discipline of it, the refusal to leave a single thread out of place, survived every single thing that was done to erase where it came from. Still making something true even now, even with no one left to see it and understand what it means. Spinning in silence long after the story of why stopped being told accurately. I think about Athena in this story more than the old texts ever encourage anyone to, because I think her side of it is far more complicated than simple wounded pride. She was the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, worshipped precisely because she was supposed to represent fairness, clear judgment, the kind of intelligence that could see a situation completely before acting on it. If she genuinely believed her own tapestry was better, she had nothing to fear from letting both pieces of work simply exist side by side for others to study and compare at their own pace. Instead, she destroyed the one piece of evidence that could have let anyone else decide for themselves what the truth actually looked like. I think that tells you something uncomfortable about wisdom, when wisdom belongs to someone with enough power to never have to defend it against genuine scrutiny. It stops needing to be right. It only needs to be believed, and destroying the competing evidence is often the fastest way to secure that belief before anyone examines it too closely. Arachne never had that luxury. Every thread she wove had to hold up to direct comparison, judged in real time, with nothing to fall back on except the accuracy of her own hands. That asymmetry, I think, is the real subject of this myth, buried under thousands of years of retellings that preferred the simpler lesson about staying humble. It's easier to teach children not to be prideful than it is to teach them that the powerful sometimes destroy the truth simply because they can, and because no one will stop them from doing it. Maybe that's its own kind of quiet defiance. The work continues, regardless of whether anyone's watching it, regardless of whether it can still change anything at all in the world above her. There's a detail worth adding here, one that outlived even Athena's fury. The scientific name for spiders given thousands of years later is Arachnida. Every spider that has ever spun a web since that day carries her name, whether the person naming them ever intended it as an honor or simply borrowed the old story without thinking too hard about what it meant. I think there's something quietly fitting in that. The goddess tried to erase the audience for her truth, and instead, every corner of the world ended up covered in small, silent reminders of her, spinning endlessly generation after generation. I think about what it means that this story survived at all, actually, given how hard Athena worked to destroy the evidence in the moment itself, right there in front of everyone. Someone, somewhere, in some retelling, passed down through generation after generation, kept insisting on describing exactly what was on that tapestry before it was torn apart by an angry hand. The gods could shred the fabric. They apparently couldn't quite shred the story of what had been woven into it, not completely, not across 3,000 years of people still choosing to tell it. So the next time someone tells you Arachne was punished for her arrogance, for daring to think she was equal to a goddess, I want you to remember what we talked about tonight, all of it, not just the ending everyone already knows by heart. Think about how many small, ordinary corners of your own life still carry a spider quietly working in them right now, spinning something intricate that almost no one ever stops to actually examine closely. Every one of those webs is, in its own strange way, still the same argument Arachne made all those centuries ago on that loom. That the work speaks for itself, whether or not anyone with power is willing to let it be seen. A woman who built a genuine skill from nothing but her own hands, who refused to hand credit for it to someone else's legend, and who used that skill, when finally challenged, to tell an uncomfortable truth with perfect technical precision. The tapestry wasn't destroyed because it was badly made. It was destroyed because it was accurate, and accuracy was the one thing that couldn't be allowed to remain on display. Maybe this was never really a story about punishing pride at all. Maybe it's a story about what happens to the person who tells the truth about power, when the people holding that power are the very ones doing the judging afterward. That's the version of the story worth carrying with you tonight, long after the details of thread and loom have faded from memory. That's tonight's story. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you tomorrow night.